Welcome, everyone. We'll be underway in just a minute. So Joan, Gunter, I know that you're there in the attendee pool. If you could go ahead and message one of the hosts or panelists, that would be wonderful. Then we'll be able to get these settings right. Everyone else, just please hang tight. We'll be with you in just a moment.
Doing this outside so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, well, while we get this these technical difficulties underway and resolved, we're going to go ahead and welcome and kick off the webinar today. Thank you all for joining us. We are absolutely thrilled that the American Beekeeping Federation is hosting this important, timely dialogue and conversation about solar farm apiaries and the opportunities for bees as well as for beekeepers. So all of our gratitude is deeply with the American Beekeeping Federation for all of their good work nationwide. If you're not yet a member of ABF, I strongly encourage you to become a member and support this important nationwide organization that works on behalf of honeybees and beekeepers throughout the country. So I'm Rob Davis, one of our panelists for today. It's my pleasure to welcome Lexi Hain of the American Solar Grazing Association, Jonathan Brown of Pace University, Stacy Peterson of the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and Kelly Rourke of Pollinator Partnership, as well as our guests, Dustin Vanass of Bear Honey and John Jacob of Old Soul Apiaries. So the topic for today is solar farms and solar farm apiaries. And what's exciting about this is the opportunity that was introduced to the world in the UK and other places throughout the country, or throughout the globe, for the design of solar farms that can, not be just about the electrons, but also provide additional benefits for the communities in which they reside. And so Lexi and I of ASGA will provide a little bit more context for this transition, because more and more of the global energy supply is coming from projects like this one, as well as like these here in the United States and also in the UK. So what I think we all know during National Pollinator Week is that pollinators are critically important. And this really important study from Rutgers University showed that today there's apples and blueberries and a wide variety of crops that are not meeting their maximum yield because of a lack of insect pollination. And certainly humans are not particularly well suited to go around with paintbrushes and do pollination, but we are suited to public policy and to development projects and to providing habitat for the pollinators that we need for our crops. So the scientists as well guide us and tell us that every opportunity we have to create quality pollinator habitat is one we should take. It's not just about the monarchs and wildlife, but also it's about the critical necessity of pollinators and the urgent work that they do nationwide. And so this work is guided in great part and with great credit to Dr. Karen Oberhauser, a monarch scientist, and the incredible Marla Spivak, a MacArthur Genius Award winner, whose TED Talk I'm sure you're all familiar with for this crowd. Then an additional set of energy scientists are studying this idea of co-location of agriculture and energy. And so the National Renewable Energy Lab INSPIRE study looks at habitat for pollinators, including honeybees, and has actually calculated those benefits to show that, you know, doing something better than bare ground or turf grass is possible, and it is meaningful within the managed context of solar farms. This is not a native restoration. It's not restoration of some pre-colonial condition, but within the fence, there is an opportunity to do something that is incrementally better than bare ground or monocrop turf grass. And so the science shows that the pollinator habitat, you know, results in beneficial forage for species. Highlighted recently, actually yesterday in the New York Times and a month prior in Science magazine, about opportunities to really double down and say, hey, we can do clean energy and we can do more and make this planet-friendly energy source even more friendly. So, and it's not just obviously about the livestock that we all enjoy with honeybees and sheep. It's also about wildlife. Someone who couldn't join us today is Howard of the Pheasants Forever.
President and CEO of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, the habitat organization. Today we're out on a solar site looking at really quality wildlife habitat. And I think one of the big questions is, what is good habitat? And what you want on that landscape is you want that variety of forbs that are blooming in the spring. You want forbs blooming in the summer and the fall. You want it to be a resource for both pollinators and monarchs and all wildlife. And if the system's right, you're also going to be sequestering an incredible amount of carbon. You're going to be holding water and you're going to be protecting soil while generating energy. And this is really an exceptional site. That's what you're looking for on that landscape. Hi, I'm Howard Vincent.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Lexi Hain, founder and executive director of the American Solar Grazing Association. Take it away, Lexi.
Rob, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience today. It is a great day of great joy for me because for many years, I've been working towards, in fact, this day and the release of this contract template. And I've done it with a fabulous team. And I will bring you a little bit back to the origin of it, which is I have a farm in upstate New York. I rotationally graze my sheep on that farm. And then from there, I bring them to solar arrays. And I also host at my farm a local commercial apiary. I have hosted them for almost 10 years now. My friends who host the apiary and I have actually taught each other some best practices around the management of the beehives and the management of the sheep, the management of the floral resources, the pasture plantings I consider, the forage availability. And so it actually has been a wonderful, compatible, harmonious thing that started on my farm and has spread now to a place where, I've been solar grazing now for, I think, 5 years. And I've seen that there are all kinds of solar sites that I am now managing with my grazing business. And I've seen that many of the same benefits that help our friends, our pollinator friends and our honeybees also provide better forage for my sheep, provide a place where lower herbicide use is needed, provide fundamentally a place where the sheep have great well-being, where I can feel safe and feel like this is an excellent choice from an animal welfare standpoint. So as I increasingly both manage my own home flock and my firm's flocks on an expanding list of sites, I also help direct and think through how this should work at scale. We started with, I must thank so much, and Jonathan Brown will be launching this, professor at Pace Law School. It was with his clinic support that this really all came together. They worked very hard to understand this rather complex project. And I think you will all find that this is going to be a living document that we can all return to and improve upon. And I look forward to being here in some number of years where we say, well, here are the 6 versions we now use of this contract template. So with that said, I just want to say, I look forward to seeing how this is used out in the world, and I raise my glass of mead to you all.
Thank you so much, Lexi. This is so great. We've got some beautiful photos to share of successful projects. And we just want to impart to folks in the beekeeping community that this isn't just, a razzle dazzle greenwashing, that there is, meaningful benefits that these projects can be designed with, that can be implemented. And so, you can ask questions and visit solar projects that look, like any of these, and actually show up and testify in support of welcoming projects to your communities that provide these additional benefits. And that, kind of community level additional support is absolutely what's urgently needed. I know that, that it's, that the climate is increasingly variable in more and more different places. And so we need to make sure that we're taking proactive action to use more clean energy, to transition away from carbon emitting, pollution emitting energy forms, and really take hold of this new technology that can again provide these additional benefits. It's my pleasure now to introduce our guests, Dustin Vanass and John Jacob. Dustin was with Bear Honey based out of Minnesota. And John is with Old Soul Apiaries based out of Oregon, and is also the president of the Southern Oregon Beekeepers Association. John, maybe I'll pass it to you first, and then Dustin. Oh, you're muted still, John.
Not to split hairs, but it's actually the Oregon State Beekeepers Association.
Oh, pardon. That's fantastic.
Which is the umbrella group. But anyways, yeah, I got involved with the agrivoltaics movement maybe 4 or 5 years ago for the benefit of pollinators, and also just to help gain general community acceptance for these solar projects. We've always negotiated our own contracts and spent innumerable dollars on attorney's fees and what have you. And so it's really nice to see a resource like this that people can use. I mean, some of these commitments are very big. I mean, all the arrangements I have are in the 30-year range. So you want to make sure you get it right from the beginning and make sure that both parties have their rights and responsibilities clearly delineated, so there's you don't get stuck in a bad situation for a long time.
John, could you speak to the performance of some of your hives that happen to be outside the fence of solar projects?
We have 4 such sites right now, and a few more coming. They have been exceptional. The honey production has been great. Colony health has been great. I think our highest producing hives are currently on our solar sites. Some of that's a function of the overall location where they're at, but also the forage that has been planted also plays a big role in colony health.
And I can second that as well. This is Dustin from Bear Honey. Yeah, the hives that we have on solar are our highest performing hives as well. We collect not only honey, but other hive products as well to produce, and pollen being one of them. We noticed that our pollen collection on solar sites is upwards of 30% higher than offsite. And as John was saying, when you're choosing solar sites, when you're working with a company, it's important to, not only look at the size and the seed mix that's on the sites, but also just as when you're choosing any other, out yard, that you're looking and you're determining what the forage is around the sites as well. I see there's a few questions coming in, and that's great. So Tim, you had a question about handle liability with workers on solar farms who are maybe allergic or may not know. So in the contract that you'll be privy to, and that will be shared with you, we do recommend that there is a liability delineation between who's liable for what on the site. Most of the places that we have hives on are outside the fence of the site. And we do carry liability insurance that names the site as well. What else? You had some other questions about who do you approach getting access to these farms, and do they have problems with the lay people, non-electric educated folks running around their power plants? Simple answer to that is we work outside the fence. We always recommend, and that's a best practice, that you locate apiaries outside the fence. So outside the fence in this jargon, meaning that it's inside the fence is where the panels are located, but most of these sites have land that is owned or leased by the solar developer that is outside the fence. And we place hives outside the fence. So we don't have people running around underneath the panels that would destroy those panels. Just a few things that I added there. So, John and I could probably riff on several things here that, that we find beneficial for being on these sites. As we both said, these sites are where our best hives are located every year consistently. When we're looking at a site for placement, some of the things to consider and look at are the ease of working with the company. The companies are all different. There's the companies of every size that are different to work with. Some are large bureaucratic organizations that you have to work through several different layers to get an answer. And some are where you'll be on the call with the owner of the site. And so when you're choosing sites to be on, oftentimes these sites will have the owner of the site or the developer, the operator of the site, on a sign at the entrance to these sites. So if you see a site going up in your neighborhood or in your county, you can always find who owns that site and who operates that site and be able to contact someone at that organization if you're interested in hosting hives. This is gaining more and more traction. So, when we start talking to people, we find that they already know that this is happening. And, if they are a pollinator friendly site, they're actively looking for beekeepers to work with. But these are also organizations that are in a disparate industry than we are. And so they don't know who to talk to. And so, making that first step and reaching out to them is often, what will need to be done in order to gain placement on these sites. When you're looking at these sites, ease of equipment access, obviously, we're pulling trailers, we're pulling trucks, we have hives. So we need, enough right-of-way space outside the fence in order to be able to place hives. That are going to be right up next to, a field of soybeans or corn in our neck of the woods. So we're always looking for, sites that are tucked away, that maybe not on a, an interstate or highly visible, but that have places where we can tuck our bees into. John, on the sites that you're on, what do they kind of look like?
Oh, very similar. We're always located on the periphery. And another thing that I always make sure is clear in our agreements is that we have access to those bees 24/7 anytime we need to. I mean, these are livestock, and things can happen where you might have to do emergency bee care or relocate them or anything like that. So it's really important to have clear access for your trucks and trailers and to be able to go there at any time. So that's part of the reason why working outside the fence perimeter works well for us too.
It's also something I've found as to why solar isn't necessarily a good fit with the hobbyist beekeeper. So, you know, the solar company they're investing, you know, tens of millions of dollars in that asset. And, you know, they want to have somebody that they have their phone number and they can be available on a moment's notice, who treats this like a business. And so whether it's from a formal contract and agreement, which was, you know, what we're introducing today, or just availability to, you know, address an issue, or, you know, access to, you know, to the kind of filtration and the extraction facilities that are needed, you know, at scale. It's, you know, particularly good fit for sideliners or, you know, into, you know, larger, you know, beekeeping operations. That said, you have to be mindful of your stocking rate. You know, we do have more and more fixtures of bee poop on solar panels. So so it's something that can happen. I know that it's something that is not happening with either Dustin's or John's hives. But you know, if you're putting your honeybee hives right up next to the solar panels and pointing the opening to fly for them to fly over the panels, that soilage is likely to accumulate. And so in terms of beekeeping, you really want to be mindful of that, as well as making sure you have an empty beehive on site, so that if bees, you know, do swarm, if another queen does emerge, that they have a natural place to go rather than a solar inverter box. I do want to make sure that we come back to more Q&A, and so please keep putting your questions into the Q&A. But we're going to turn now to Jonathan Brown with Pace University, who is Jonathan and his team created the template contract that is being shared today. Jonathan?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that introduction. So again, my name is John Brown. I teach at Pace Law School, which is in White Plains, New York. And I run a legal clinic there, which is an opportunity for law students at the school to represent clients. In our case, all of our clients are small farms, small food businesses, and nonprofit organizations in the farming and food space. So our clinic had the pleasure for the last few years to work with Lexi and American Solar Grazing Association on a number of great projects, including now a couple of years ago, we worked with Lexi and ASGA to develop a model solar grazing contract. So Lexi talked a little bit about what's.
Oh, just that was the foundation for bridging that gap between what are often small or mid-sized farms or grazing businesses and the solar asset owners who often have you know, legal teams, who have insurance requirements, who have an expectation that their partners will want to use a contractual agreed on. And fundamentally what we're doing is we're setting an expectation of a professional relationship between the agricultural sector and the energy sector, the clean energy business and our partners here who want to use good grazing practices and want to bring those practices onto solar arrays. So we did develop that with Jonathan's team. Recently, you'll be glad to know, I was handed a copy of our own contract for my grazing business. It was modified. It was that living document, but I was thinking, this looks oddly familiar. So it is out there. It's being used by corporations, and I am thrilled because it's helping solar grazing take off. And this seemed to be, I'll just pass it back to John and say, this seemed to be something that when we dug around a little, the beekeepers that the professional beekeepers we spoke with seemed like, let's frame this discourse. So thank you.
Hi, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure exactly where I left off. I got momentarily disconnected, but I just shared in the chat a link to the solar grazing contract model we developed with ASGA. So, and what our students have worked on in the last year is developing a model contract for solar beekeeping. that was really made possible working with great stakeholders and working with Lexi, working with Rob, and in particular with Dustin and John, as well as other beekeepers and experts in the area, and really would not have been able to do this without working with Dustin and John and understanding their business arrangements, how they think about these relationships with solar developers. Oh, someone just said can't see the chat. I will try sending that again. Hopefully this went through this time. So what several of us have referenced that there's a contract coming. So we plan to share this week, if not today, with all of the attendees and registrants, a model solar beekeeping contract that we've developed. And the idea here is to have a place to start for these relationships, because this is obviously a new kind of business relationship. And what we found with the solar grazing contract, and just as much so, if not more so, the solar beekeeping is a lot of it is just where do you start, right? Like you can't start from just a lease. This is not a lease relationship, right? This is not someone paying the landlord money to have access to the land. In fact, what's going on with these business arrangements is that generally developers are paying beekeepers to put their hives at the solar site because there are benefits that accrue to the solar developer. Developers want to have this there, and there are a lot of good incentives for them to have it there. And so not only does this help beekeepers in the sense that this is a great place to locate a site, as Dustin and John have explained, we think that it's appropriate that if it's this valuable to solar developers, that they can pay. And that's the arrangement that, as I understand, in the larger arrangements that John and Dustin are doing, that is what's happening. It's payment for the service of providing an apiary at the solar site. But again, this is a pretty new concept. This is a pretty new arrangement. So we think it's valuable to have a contract that lays that out clearly and lays out a number of issues. Like people have already brought up liability. How do you approach liability when you have bees at the site? For that particular issue, the way we approach it is that these are bees. Solar sites should know what they're getting into. And so, liability stemming from the fact that people may be stung by bees, that should be something that the solar sites accept. Both parties recommended should have insurance, should have liability insurance. But that kind of, expected risk from having bees on the site, that is something that probably should be absorbed by the solar developer. So that is, one of the many issues that we think it's important to set out in the contract. So just generally, why is it important to have a contract for this kind of thing? John's already alluded to some of the reasons, but in any situation like this, if you want this relationship to last for a long time, if you're expecting that, everything that you're being told is great for the developer and everything that's working today is going to last, well, you better have that in writing. You better have a contractual commitment to that. But beyond that, there's going to be all sorts of issues that probably won't get worked out unless you work them out through the process of talking through what's going to go into a contract and working that out together. And I think it's much more beneficial to work that out at the outset when you're forming this relationship than waiting till down the road. These issues could arise later and you don't know if you're on the same page. And at that point, there's going to be disputes. So, I think that's true in any kind of business arrangement. And we always advocate for clients to put their arrangements down in writing and in solid contracts. I'd say it's even more valuable in this situation because, again, there's very, very little in the way of precedent here for this kind of relationship. If you have a very short lease and you haven't addressed a provision, you can probably refer to landlord-tenant law and how these things usually work in a firm lease arrangement, for example. But what can you refer to when you have a solar beekeeping arrangement and you say, well, okay, how does it typically work in a solar beekeeping arrangement? This is pretty new, and so if you don't work it out in the contract, there's not a lot of places you can turn. So I don't want to spend time going through every clause of the contract here. Again, we're going to share it very shortly with everyone, and I hope it's valuable. Just a couple key things I want to mention. For any arrangement like this, any business contract, usually the most important terms are what is the payment and what is the payment for? What are the services that are being provided or goods that are being provided in exchange for the payment? And that's maybe not totally obvious here, what those terms are for someone coming in and not having seen one of these arrangements before. So again, we spent a lot of time talking to stakeholders, and particularly Dustin and John, thinking through the different ways these could work from a business perspective. What we laid out in the model contract is that the payment could be in the form of a payment for services over time, a periodic payment. It could be one lump sum payment up front. In some cases with folks we talked to, the payment's been in the form of a commitment by a solar developer to buy a certain amount of honey at a premium price. That's probably less typical, but it's possible. And then in exchange, what is the service that a beekeeper is provided in exchange for that payment? It's not enough just to say, you're paying me for having a solar site apiary, period. Well, what is the solar site apiary? When is it going to be there? What is the thing that's being provided in exchange? In some arrangements, a lot of what's driving this is being able to classify and qualify the land as land and agricultural production, depending on how that's defined under state law. There may be tax benefits or other benefits that accrue to the landowner if having the apiary located at the site can qualify the land as land and agricultural production. So in that case, the service that's being provided in exchange for the payment could be, to put an apiary there to cause the land and maintain the land as land and agricultural production, however that's defined under your particular state law. In other states or in other situations, that may not apply. It's certainly different from state to state how this would be viewed in terms of land and agricultural production or the comparable term. So in other cases, that might not work. So what we've laid out in our contract is a couple different options for that, including that it could be something like that, causing the land to qualify, or it could be just a bare minimum number of hives at the site over the term of the contract, not necessarily every day of the year, but defining what the season is or time ranges are going to be within the year where it's committed there are going to be some hives at the site. And then the last thing to mention, something we understood to be a pretty important term in talking to stakeholders is what is the vegetation management plan? And if the arrangement at the outset, if that's important to you, what the vegetation is going to be, it's important to address that in the contract to make sure, if there's a plan that's been shared with you, the landlord or landowner is going to stick to that plan. If that plan is going to change, you might, maybe have some consent rights of that changing if it's going to change in a material way that affects the core of the relationship and why you're putting your bees there in the first place. And then you could also build in requirements as to pollinator friendly vegetation right there at the outfront when you're laying that out in the contract, what the vegetation is going to be.
And John and Dustin, could you both comment about that last item? To what do you attribute the health of your honeybees and the prosperity of your honeybees? Is it the panels or is it maybe something else?
Go ahead, John.
I would say it's diversity of forage and lack of pesticides, chiefly.
I would echo the same regard. When I was talking about our pollen collection earlier, oftentimes when we're collecting pollen at other sites, we get very large amounts of the same type of pollen in each load. Whereas at our solar sites is a very diverse amount of pollens that are in the pollen collection baskets that we're harvesting. And so there's definitely a large diversity, and it's throughout the entire season. So there's always that pollen availability, which keeps our hives growing. And that's definitely. And then our site selection also, we're often choosing sites that have ample forage for honey as well around them.
Anything else to add, John? I know certainly there are a lot of kind of bare ground or turf grass solar projects in Oregon. I don't believe you have bees on any of them, but anything else to add there?
No, I wouldn't get involved with any solar apiary if it weren't strategically managed for pollinators. Super important. Those guys are going to make a lot of money, and if you're going to do something with them, you should have an agreement that makes sure that they do it right.
I'd like to add also that, one part of having this agreement in place and having that predictability of what the seed mix is on the site and having the operators provide that seed mix to you, as well as their management calendars, is that you can then help time out your season as well, knowing like what's coming into bloom, and what's on the site, how many pounds of seed per acre were planted of certain different types of plants can help you be a little bit more predictive of what kind of harvest you're going to get on these sites.
That's fantastic. I'd like to make some space now. We resolved our technical issues, and Joan, I'd love, thank you so much for hosting this important, conversation, sharing it with the American Beekeeping Federation members. Joan, I apologize. Is your title president of ABF or chairwoman of the board?
No, I am the president of the American Beekeeping Federation.
Wonderful.
And
yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. All right, well, I'd like to thank everyone, first of all, for being a part of this very important webinar. Anything with pollinators and help for managed honeybees is greatly appreciated by the American Beekeeping Federation. As I said before, I'm the president of this association, and we are very proud to bring this webinar to your attention. It was planned during Pollinator Week for a reason. It was a good way to recognize and promote our pollinator health and the importance of it. And I'd like to thank you all, to all the ABF members that are in attendance today for your support, and also welcome all the non-members. And if you're interested in becoming a member of this great organization, you can reach out to a member in your area that is an ABF member, or else go to abfnet.org for more information on how to become a part of our ABF family. It's just been a wonderful presentation, and thank you everyone for all you've done.
That's so great. And for the solar developers that are either joining us live or listening to the recording later, I would definitely warmly encourage you to be in touch with ABF when you're designing solar projects that can provide meaningful benefits to beekeepers and honeybees. Definitely do get in touch with the local chapter of ABF to ensure that they know about that particular design attribute of the project. But it's not just ABF and those of us that have been talking so far. I also want to make some space for other really strategic organizations that are here to help beekeepers, as well as solar developers in this kind of new transition to kind of new energy and new agricultural landscapes. It's my pleasure that we have two leaders in this space, Kelly Rourke from Pollinator Partnership, the new executive director, and Stacy Peterson, the energy program lead of the NCAT, the organization, national agricultural organization that's kind of been around since before the organic certification, has been working on sustainable and specialty farms forever. And maybe Stacy, I'll turn to you first to just share some remarks, and then Kelly, you're on deck.
Sure, thank you. I wanted to say thank you to all the panelists for all the great work that you're doing. I'm very impressed with all of your work. I'm with the National Center for Appropriate Technology. We're also NCAT. We're a national nonprofit in sustainable energy and sustainable ag. And we're really excited about an upcoming project that might be helpful to folks that's going to be called the Agri-Solar Clearinghouse. And it will be a clearinghouse of information regarding solar grazing, solar apiaries, anything in the agri-solar space. Will be an information clearinghouse and a networking space. And we're also hoping to have a lot of best practices and information like this included in the clearinghouse. So we hope to see you all there, and we hope to continue hearing all these great things that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Kelly?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. I first want to congratulate the contract team on their release of the template, which I'm sure will be very, very useful to many people. So congrats on that. So just want to take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about Pollinator Partnership. So again, I'm Kelly Rourke. I'm the executive director of Pollinator Partnership. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're based in San Francisco, California. However, we work on a North American scope on all pollinator issues. So our goal, our mission is to promote pollinator health and their habitat through conservation, education, research, and policy. We have many programs. Pollinator Week is actually one of our key initiatives. We started this 15 years ago, so definitely happy Pollinator Week to everyone. We also have programs like bee-friendly farming, monarch butterfly conservation, and many actually that focus on honeybees in particular. We have a honeybee health grant program, a BMD web diagnostic tool, and many forage guides as well. So more recently, we've gotten involved with consulting with the solar industry to promote pollinator habitat in solar operations. And so under that, we've been helping with more on the purchaser side with power purchase agreements, as well as pollinator-friendly scorecards. And then in terms of development, we've been helping with site assessments, seed mix curation, habitat plans from everything involving site preparations, installation and long-term maintenance as well. And then in addition, we've helped with some permitting, education and outreach to increase community buy-in as well. So basically, we're doing everything we can to provide safe forage for honeybees and other pollinators while making it feasible, affordable, and beneficial for all parties involved. So I'll leave it there, and you're welcome to reach out to me. Pollinator.org is our website, and my email is kr@pollinator.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Lexi, Jonathan, any closing remarks before, or I guess any remarks to add and before we kind of turn to closing up?
Thank you for doing this. I look forward to seeing these best practices in action.
Fantastic. So the model contract will you'll find a copy in all of your email boxes. In again, if not later today, absolutely this week, and it'll be posted to the websites of some of our organizations. So we're very grateful for all of your time and input in all of this work. One additional question did come in just now to the panelists. So the question is, at what stage or year after a perennial seed mix is installed, so after seeding is installed, at what stage should a solar developer begin working with beekeepers? Maybe, Dustin and John, I imagine you guys will have interesting and different answers to that question. Because I think you've both started from the very beginning and also come in when the site's been fully established.
Yeah, definitely. So we've been on sites that are year 1 sites. We've been on sites that are up to year 5 now, I think year 5. Yeah. And so, I think we really see the benefit starting in year 2. Year 1 sites, there's a lot of perennials that are biennial blooms that haven't come up or yet, and so you start seeing the bigger diversity in year 2. So I would say year 2 is what I would recommend, and that what we look for at this point. So we don't look for year 1 sites, but we look for year 2 sites or further on.
John, anything to add?
Well, I would agree that many of the benefits accrue over time, especially as plantings become more mature. But that said, every site I've been involved with, we've started working with the developer before one seed has been planted, before one panel has been put up, because these guys often need and want guidance for the project. So I've been lucky enough to be involved usually before ground is even broke.
Yep. And, I think that these questions will be, incredibly diverse and variable as different states have policies that have, agricultural or energy incentives, that require a solar developer to work with a beekeeper or just other structures, and those will continue to evolve. But I think the important thing is it doesn't hurt to start early. And in terms of when the bees go on, it's always going to be site-specific decisions.
And I definitely noticed that, Kelly mentioned the pollinator scorecard. So Rob, if you could talk a little bit more about that, I think that would be a helpful part of this question when Clayton was asking about, is there a threshold percentage of bloom coverage? Going onto a site that has a pollinator scorecard is an easy way to then determine like what is coming into bloom and how much bloom there will be. Hey,
yeah,
I like our guest star here.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, Pollinator Partnership and Fresh Energy and other organizations, a variety of state agencies and universities, I think in about a dozen states or so, have published something called a pollinator-friendly solar scorecard. So if you're a beekeeper and looking at a project or in dialogue with a solar developer, you don't necessarily have to ask for the seed mix. You can ask for the scorecard because it is specifically designed to be reasonable and incremental change within the managed context of a solar project. Obviously, you have significant restrictions with regards to the height that the vegetation can be allowed to grow, and there's obviously significant limits with regards to the economics of the project. And so, there are, certain criteria that that solar developers are, have to operate within. And these scorecards are designed to meet those parameters, while also providing that incremental and meaningful amount of forage that is good for managed bees as well as for native bees. I was answered somebody's question in the comment, which was about these sites being good for native bees, a question. And I know, John, one of your projects in Oregon, it was featured in Science Magazine recently, and that study showed that of the 60 different varieties of pollinators that were collected on site over the course of a summer, only 12% were honeybees. And so that to me says this is a safe space for the honeybees, and they're not crowding out the natives, but they weren't subjected to any of the insecticides that they might be subjected to in other landscapes. So so there's a growing number of resources and tools for beekeepers to use from any and all of our organizations to ensure that you can get your questions answered, and that you can help support and take advantage of and maximize the benefits of this transition to these new landscapes. With that, we will close. This is being recorded, so this will be online, and we will make sure that you all get a links and can share it with colleagues and friends. And we're so grateful for your time. Joan, any closing remarks that you'd like to add as well? Oh, I'm sorry, Joan, you might be back on mute, but all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, have a great rest of your afternoon. And, with you, wishing you healthy, happy bees and, an productive harvest. Have a great day. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.